Greetings, comrades, and hello, everyone. I'm Quint866. You probably noticed I brought back the old intro. I kind of wanted to do that because I've had a hard time placing an intro because I haven't really had any recurring series apart from my Let's Plays. But since I've committed to the Anime Memories retrospective, given how many videos and reviews I've made for it so far, I think it's time I start including the intro and the outro I had made once again, due to kind of using that, since I've had the intro for a while and I haven't really used it for anything. I think I used the outro even less, but regardless. Welcome to the Anime Memories Retrospective's next review. I unfortunately do not think I'll be able to cram in the scripting for Hellsing Ultimate, so Hellsing Ultimate will have to wait till another day. But until then, let's cover Sailor Moon R, or more importantly, the Makai Tree arc of Sailor Moon R, since as I mentioned before, a few seasons of Sailor Moon have two different arcs in them. Now, you also may have noticed I renamed the Sailor Moon Classic Season 1 review to the Dark Kingdom arc, with Season 1 in parentheses, and that's because not gonna lie, I kind of forgot because I have scripted all of the Sailor Moon reviews ahead of time. Yes, I've done every season's reviews, so they're all just waiting to be recorded and all that jazz. I forgot that I was doing the reviews by the arc, not by the season, so that's why I renamed it. But, this arc is the Makai Tree Alien arc, or just the Makai Tree arc. Now, I know it's sometimes translated to the Hell Tree, but I'm gonna call it the Makai Tree just because saying Hell Tree over and over and over, I'd start laughing and I wouldn't take myself seriously at all. The Hell Tree! Oh my gosh. But anyways, without time to waste, let's haste.
And now, in the name of the moon, I'll punish you!
Okay, you might be wondering why I'm doing another overly long intro. That's because I need to fill in the time since I want to make this review proper. Now, why do I say that? Well, because I will not be needing to go into the animation or the world again. Really, I won't. Since the animation, despite being kind of weird at times, it's early anime and I'd be being a dead horse. I'm no animation expert, so I won't go into much detail about it. Nor will I really cover the world again, since I really said all I need to say about the world in the first season, and the world doesn't exactly change, since it's mostly contained in Juban. I mean, there's still good locations, but we'll get to those when we get to those. However, I will do the sound again, because with new characters' voices coming in, as well as new soundtracks for every season, that warrants another sound section. However, what I want to do in this overly long intro section is explain myself, since I'm sure my Sailor Moon Season 1 review hasn't gotten tons of views, but I do want to say this to clear up anyone who has any doubts coming into this retrospective. I know I gave a really critical outlook of Sailor Moon Season 1. I said I liked it, and I do. However, I will admit, for such an innovative anime that's heavily renowned, that first season is really a rocky point, since you really have to sit through that first season in order to get to the good stuff. And people out there say don't skip seasons, at least I don't, because, I mean, you kind of need to start. I mean, Sailor Moon is mostly filler as is, but having all that filler actually kind of makes the build-up and waiting through it feel worth it, since you did so much to get to that point. But I can see why that turns fans off. But, speaking of turning fans off, actually, this season opens up with an anime-exclusive arc, the Makai Tree Alien arc, which was not in the manga or in the Crystal variants, as far as I heard of. And for those manga purists out there that are like, anime exclusive material, it's not accurate to the source material, this is gonna go on downhill. Well, I really like this arc. Okay, hold on. To any of those manga purists out there that are like, for real? Are you just saying you like this to spit on the fans? No, I'm not. I genuinely mean this is where I started seeing Sailor Moon's innovation and, really good aspects at this season. Okay, it's not the best arc ever. It's actually really, really short. Even though people say it drags, I don't get why. This arc is like 12 episodes long, so I don't get it. But allow me to explain why. I mean, really, people, how can you complain the Makai Tree Alien arc drags when the Dark Kingdom arc is 46 episodes long? It's the first season and the longest one. Okay, it's still good. I mean, the 4 Kingsmen of Heaven are still, to this date, my favorite elites, and the Yoma demons, as basic as their fights were, I will admit their physical designs were a lot more intimidating than the later monsters / minions of the week, which go for a more cartoony-esque design. Even then, the 4 Kingsmen of Heaven, despite being my favorites, had flaws, mainly present within Jadeite and Kunzite. However, Nephrite and Zoisite were amazing though, and definitely a lot more complex than later villain arcs, but even they still have problems that later villain elites kinda had working against them. I mean, like I said, the Yoma Demon's designs are definitely a lot more intimidating. That final battle was really, really good, and Tuxedo Mask was probably the most effectively used here due to him turning into Endymion and becoming evil, and for also understandably not having any upgrades. At this point in the series, at least. And that final battle with Metalia and Beryl was iconic, though I'm not a fan of either Metalia or Beryl as villains, let alone characters. I mean, they work as final villains, but it's really tacked on. Still iconic, though. Now, compare that to the Makai Tree Alien arc, which does stuff like this. A tree crash lands on Earth from a distant alien planet called the Makai Tree, which is this arc's big bad. The 2 elites of this arc, Ale and On, are aliens that try and blend in with the humans as typical Japanese students to try and gain energy for the Makai Tree so they can regrow it. Of course, the Makai Tree itself has more purpose than just being the big bad, and Ale and On have more purpose than just being elites this time. They use tarot card-themed monsters called Cardians. Yeah, very creative name, although the idea of tarot card-themed monsters of the week is actually pretty amusing. On the way, the Sailor Scouts regain their memories, get new abilities, find out what's going on with Ale and On, discover the mysteries of the 2 school students that are posing as Ale and On, meet the Moonlight Knight, who is effectively the new Tuxedo Mask since Mamoru lost his memories, and they ultimately fight Ale and On, discovering more about them, finding out more about the Makai Tree and why it's so important to them. It's not just because it's, well, part of their home, but also because the Makai Tree rejuvenates these aliens, and it's slowly losing power, meaning if it does, they can't live. Also, am I the only one who prefers Mamoru as the Moonlight Knight? Just me? Okay then. Well, enjoy this smooth as heck sword animation. Keep in mind, this is over the course of about 12 or 9 episodes or so, depending on which dub you watch with the cut episodes and whatnot, and translations and all that jazz. But it's actually pretty impressive they managed to squeeze so much content into that little episodes. Now, that might make it seem more rushed, however, it's definitely a lot more tricky to squeeze in lots of content in that little episodes versus the Dark Kingdom, which was kind of really empty, because 46 episodes gave a lot more room for space, but there was a lot more filler. Now, granted, there's still filler here, but it doesn't feel out of place with this being an anime-exclusive arc, as well as it being not that long to begin with, so I don't really get the complaints in that regard. But with all that said out of the way, let's move on to the next section.
Who are you? Tell me.
I am known as the Moonlight Knight.
Since I have already covered the main cast, I'm really only going to be covering the new characters and or characters that get significant changes. Now, the Moonlight Knight, I'm just going to say right now, since it's really should be not much of a surprise considering he looks exactly like Mamoru, and despite the fact they try to give ambiguity while showing the Moonlight Knight in same scenes as Mamoru, it's revealed that Mamoru, when he lost his memories, a part of him in his heart or mentality broke off and manifested into the Moonlight Knight, essentially creating kind of like a clone. But once the Makai Tree alien's last episode comes around, he goes back into Mamoru, giving him back his memories. But That goes without saying. But I feel like the Makai Tree aliens as a villain faction are a little underrated. Now, okay, they're definitely not the most, like, well drawn out villains. They actually go by really quickly, but for what we got, I found it really endearing. Starting with the basic monsters slash minions of the week, the Cardians. Okay, not gonna lie, I do kind of agree with the fan base on this one. I do like the tarot card theme, which is nice, though I'm not sure if they're any more or less threatening. Now, okay, they do portray them as more powerful than the Yoma demons, however, they still amount to the same strategies, and their designs are definitely a lot more cartoony. Again, it's still fairly early for anime standards, but it really makes it hard for me to take a lot of these fights seriously when they're about the same as the first season's fights. Now, granted, there are new upgrades, but even that was handled kind of poorly to me. Venus's Crescent Beam has evolved into Crescent Beam Shower. A good idea since it'll act more like an AoE, but they really don't treat it like an AoE, they just treat it more like a strength boost, which is a bit of a letdown since an AoE move like that would be beneficial. Sailor Mercury probably had the best one with her Bubble Spray, turning into Bubble Spray Freezing, which freezes foes, acting more like a status effect, though the episode where this happens is really cringy and really stupid. Mars gets Fire Soul turned into Fire Soul Bird, which all it really does is make her attack more powerful and in the shape of a bird. It's okay, but kinda lame. And Sailor Jupiter, her Supreme Thunder turns into Supreme Thunder Dragon. It sounds cooler and it looks cooler than Fire Soul Bird, however, it really serves the same purpose, just as a power booster, and even then, I think Sailor Jupiter only uses this move once, which is kind of a letdown. I mean, I wanted to see more of this animation, but whatever. And okay, Sailor Moon's new attack, Moon Princess Halation, is definitely a lot better looking and a lot better sounding than Moon Tiara Action. I seriously don't know why that's what her attack in the first season was called, but whatever. Even so, it just acts as more of a power boost, rather than giving it a unique use, which is what the ability should have had. I mean, Cardcaptor Sakura got this fight. Sure, there were some, abilities that were interchangeable, like sand and earth, but they at least had different uses. Here, the abilities here, despite being similar, aren't used differently. They're not used as, hey, we can use it for this problem compared to the other ability, which we couldn't. It was more of, oh, now we're strong enough to hit the enemies. Go! Kinda lame, considering that's not what a new ability is supposed to be. A new ability shouldn't be something that's required to win. It should be used as something new that gives you something the old ability doesn't, apart from just a generic strength upgrade. That's why Sailor Mercury is actually really, really heavily regarded in my eyes, since she got this with hers in almost every season. The rest of them didn't really get that. I mean, Venus maybe, since the Love Me chain in Season 3 definitely got more usage, and even if the Crescent Beam Shower isn't treated like an AoE, you can argue it is one, giving it that, but the first one and the fourth one really weren't that great, but I digress. The Cardians, all in all, are a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to basic minions. Like, you'd hope they'd improve over the Yoma demons, and on a few accounts they do, but on a few accounts the Yoma demons stand strong, so I really don't know which monster of the week is better, though. However, the Elites Ale and On are a pretty big step up, if you ask me. Now, I still prefer the Four Kingsmen of Heaven by a long shot for having more moments and just being entertaining, but Ale and On, putting it lightly, combine a lot of ideas most of the first season's villains had. In a weird way, I can kind of see Ale and On being inspired by many of the original season's major villains' themes. Jadeite's theme was that he wanted to complete the mission and gain the approval from his superiors. Nephrite's theme was that he wanted to pursue his own goals. Zoisite's theme was he wanted to have love that was unlikely or forbidden in his position. Kunzite was about revenge. Endymion was about being manipulated. And Queen Beryl was about jealousy. while Metalia is just, well, evil. My point is that Ale and On essentially combine all of these into a much shorter, albeit really interesting analysis to make of them. I mean, at the end of the day, Ale and On are certainly more simple villains, but they do combine a lot of those themes I just mentioned earlier. I mean, seriously, guys, I feel like a lot of people write this off. Either that or they don't notice it about Ale and On. They combine a lot of themes the previous major villains had while making it briefer, more subtle, and not really that focus of... wow, that's what I get for rushedly... Rushedly? I don't think rushedly is a word! This is what I get for not following the script! Okay. I'm gonna keep that in, but let me just get, like, some images and whatnot to show that they really do share similarities with the original villains. They tie Jadeite's loyalty and obedience to his job in order to gain Barrel's approval, with them going as far as they can to heal the Makai tree, since without it, they will die. They tie in Nephrite's theme of self-ambitions, with Ale going after Jupiter and a few other romantic crushes in a few scenes, and On having passions for stuff like being a star, and literature and acting, like in the Snow White episode. So there is some self-ambition there, even if it's more lightly played. For Zoisite's whole idea of forbidden love, this is really shown since Ale and On, in their disguised human student personas, they say they're brother and sister. Now, despite loving each other as aliens, they quickly find out that you can't have a brother and sister loving each other, and given the fact they already introduced themselves to the schools, they can't just lie saying they're not brother and sister. I mean, incest is illegal, and there's no love more forbidden than that! I'm sorry for going off track here. They tie Kunzite's idea with revenge when the Sailor Scouts constantly interrupt their progress to get energy for the Makai tree, thus making them want to go after them even more. They tie Endymion's idea of being lied to when it's revealed what the tree was really for and how they really need to heal it. And they also tie the jealousy back into that thing I said earlier with the brother and sister personas at school, since Ale and On find individual crushes in different characters, since they can't exactly love each other out in public, despite the fact they do so in their alien forms. It really does tie into it. And, okay, this is a lot lighter played, for sure, and it's way more indirect, but the fact they tied in all these themes while introducing a few new ones was actually really interesting. And the new themes I actually found really endearing, since they actually make their gray zones really, really memorable. I'm not even kidding here when I say this. I think Ale and On's Gray Zone arc or redemption was the best handled. It's way more justifiable than Barrel's jealousy. Wise Man's evil, so you can't really justify him. The Deathbuster seeking attention and Professor Tomoe siding with Pharaoh 90 to save his daughter is good, but it has been done before. Nehelenia wanting to be beautiful is meh. And Sailor Galaxia definitely was interesting in the manga, with her not really liking to protect her planet despite being the Sailor Guardian of it, but the anime kind of downplays this with her just getting possessed by chaos by stealing within her own body. So, in my opinion, Ale and On's Gray Zone redemption arc was the best handled one in the 90s anime. The new themes they introduced for Ale and On's Gray Zone arc I find really, really endearing. And I'm saying this because I don't usually enjoy alien stories. They're usually really cliche with the humans trusting the aliens, but the aliens being evil so the humans hunt them. However, here, the aliens have some really unique struggles, like being forced into an unfamiliar world. And while in that unfamiliar world, they have to literally gamble with fate against time. Maybe that's why they actually had Cardian-based tarot card monsters, because they're literally gambling with fate. There's other themes too, like being homesick away from their home world. And speaking of their home world, another theme is survival, longevity, keeping their race alive, since the race had been constantly fighting, which ties into another theme, losing those you love right in front of you. Another theme is being lonely. This one especially struck a good note with me. Ale and On are just lonely characters. I think this is actually really interesting considering a lot of us are lonely, and it also is a really interesting flip on the alien story. Usually it's the humans who are struggling, trying to survive because Earth is not infinite, the resources are dwindling, but having the aliens come to Earth because they're struggling? That's actually really creative, and it puts a lot of the humans' actions into questions, while also making you start to feel for the aliens more. They're not aliens trying to manipulate humans to get something out of them, they're just trying to survive in this galactic world across many different galaxies, and that's kind of what we humans struggle to do, and I just find Ale and On really, really amusing characters. The fact that they're so lonely really makes me feel for them because I'm lonely too. I make these videos because I want to reach out in the community because I don't really get a lot of recognition or social support. Despite how extroverted I am, I really do want to meet more people and talk with more people and enjoy my time with them. I can't really get that with the pandemic, which has massively affected my extroverted social nature. And the Makai tree itself is actually really simple. The Makai tree was, what gave birth to these aliens, and it kept them alive. However, over time, the aliens started fighting over who got the Makai tree aliens' energy, making the race effectively almost kill themselves, which is actually really interesting as well. The Makai tree, with a few survivors, goes from world to world trying to gain energy and trying to help its children survive, since the Makai tree gave birth to these aliens. And eventually, when it gets to Earth, Ale and On were the only survivors. Now, there is technically another character that shares a similar design in the movie, however, it hasn't been confirmed whether or not that character is one of the Makai tree aliens or not. Another thing is that the Makai tree only truly purifies itself once Ale and On learn to realize to love others. No, not love themselves, not love each other, but learn to love others and other worlds, and not just leech off of them for the sake of the tree. The tree became corrupted when the aliens who fought against one another took energy from it, effectively infecting the tree. And once Ale and On finally learned to care for others, since they're struggling in this great big world just like them, the tree finally is purified with their energy, allowing the tree to be reborn new, allowing Ale and On to go home, and seeing the Sailor Guardians forgive them just really, really struck a good note with me. And I feel like Ale and On are really underrated because these themes they're not that deep went into for 12 episodes, but it's really, really interesting for an alien story. With all that said and out of the way, I basically covered the story in the character segment, so there's no real need for me to go into the story at this rate. So I guess to cap off this review, we'll talk about the sound, since the audio changes from season to season.
Makai tree, take only the girl's energy, now!
No, Makai tree, take only the guy's energy!
Ale!
Don't tell me that you've forgotten how I've always taken care of you!
Hear me, Makai tree, I will not stand for you disobeying me!
Funnily enough, there's not really a lot to say here. I like the new themes for the season, but most of the themes that really stand out to me come during the second arc of this season, which we'll get into in another video. But ultimately, the themes here are good. They still maintain a consistent quality overall with season 1's. However, I'm really going to go into more detail during the second arc of Sailor Moon R, so until then, we're going to have to put this section on hold, because I don't want to spoil all the audio here, and I feel like I should talk about the audio in R with stuff already established during the second arc, the Black Moon Clan arc. So until then, I'm just going to read off a few generic extras in the story segment, since I really just kind of went through the story during the character section, but I do have a few notes I wanted to put in. So, next section.
That was just horrible! I can't believe I worked so hard and you sent an accordion to ruin it all!
Shut up. Did you forget we're here to gather as much energy as we can?
Alright, a few things I want to point out is, again, I do think that, given how I've said the story already, I shouldn't go into too much details, but I'll talk about a few highlight episodes. I like the VR episode. That was a pretty neat one, though it is a shame that it's not really virtual reality. I know I'm just nitpicking and overanalyzing like I always do, but the VR in this way is treated more like augmented reality, with people in real life walking around with glasses, shooting stuff that you see kind of like those AR games on your phone. It's not really virtual reality, it's AR because you're still walking in the real world, and you see the real world, but it's just stuff that appears in the glasses. So I don't really know if that's VR or AR. It was still cool though. And also had the scene with the Moonlight Knight sheathing his sword like Virgil, which was really cool. Though not every episode was that great. Even though the episode with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs does sound pretty generic, the problem I have with it isn't really the play, since they don't focus on the Snow White play for that long. The real problem is that Han just so clearly you're supposed to hate for screwing over every other character, clearly trying to steal a kiss from Mamoru to get inside Usagi's head. So yeah, I really didn't like Han in that episode. And the absolute worst episode, in my opinion, of the entire series is in this arc. And that's a shame too, considering Ale and Han deserved so much better, in my opinion at least. There's this episode. It's a babysitting episode. And automatically you can see where I'm going with this. I mean, obviously, like, you know, Usagi and Mamoru wanting to have a kid will tie into future themes, obviously, given their fated love and all that. But this episode was a horrible way to expand that. That babysitting episode, God. For one, you know, they have, you know, them taking care of a little kid, changing his diapers, all that jazz, all the cringy baby stuff that Shrek 3 tried to pull. But come on, people. I get it that this is an Ale and On season, which is, you know, widely regarded as, you know, the least interesting arc behind Super S, which I don't agree with, but whatever. And I understand Ale and On aren't the most likable villains, but they deserved way better than this. And I have to ask, why was this episode kept in, yet episodes like the one with Usagi and the jazz piano player in season 1 removed? The jazz piano player, like, well, yeah, Usagi snuck into a nightclub, but is that really all you need to ban it? I actually really liked that episode. The jazz piano player was one of the better one-episode characters. So the fact they kept this episode in, yet removed that one, made me was like, what? So yeah, I really was not a fan of that babysitting episode. It's also the episode where Mercury gets her new ability. Another bad thing, since you have to watch these episodes if you want to skip through filler, because it shows Mercury getting her new ability. Yeah, that babysitting episode is really not that great, and probably one of the worst episodes. I don't know if it's the worst. I still have to go through the episodes and remind myself which ones I really didn't like. But for people to complain Artemis's Animal Adventure is bad and turn a blind eye to this babysitting episode really has me shaking my head at the fans on this one. Other than that, though, I really liked this season. Well, overall, obviously I like R way more than Sailor Moon Classic, but this arc definitely felt like it was a lot more cohesive and didn't outstay its welcome like the Dark Kingdom arc. Maybe that's because it was shorter and it was yearning for something a little less drawn out, and it might even be too short, I'd argue. However, I really don't mind. Ale and On were interesting villains, the Makai tree was really interesting to the lore, and the Cardians, while disappointing, do kind of symbolize Ale and On's struggle against time and fate. Overall, I'm not going to rate the Makai tree arc on its own, since I'm going to be ranking the seasons overall, but until then, just know that I think the Makai tree arc is just as good as the Dark Kingdom arc, if not a little bit better. I can understand it's short, thus comparing content would be really hard. However, I'm only going to give a number rating for every season. But until then, I'm Quint866. Have a good one.